So today we are going to be changing over the inlet manifold. A few things have changed since the last video. I have put the intercooler on. Well, you know what? I'm going to need 2 hands for this, I think. 1 second. Let's get this bumper off quickly. As I was saying, I've offered up the intercooler just to see how much space I'm going to have here, because if you remember, there is no radiator. The previous owner's plan for the radiator was to put it in a boot, basically, under the floor. I don't want to do that. And I've used the radiator that they were going to use to do that, to put it in the front of my twin turbo. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't, because I've used the radiator for something else. Now, I didn't really think things through, because I'm not going to get a true picture of how much space I'm going to get until I've changed around the inlet manifold, because the new one, or the replacement, or the original one, let's say, is sits in a completely different place. It sits down there and it's going to take up a load of space over there. So yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I have thought about putting a small one here. This is where the fuel tank was, which I'll show you in a second. So that could be an option for now, until I get around to putting the fuel tank there with the belt driven fuel pump, which I really, really do want to use, because I think that's just a good idea. Let me show you actually. It's over here with all the bits that I kept from this turbo build. So we've got to change the sump as well, because it's got this big oil return AN fitting welded to it. So we will be using that. It's baffled as well. I'm assuming because it's baffled, that must mean it's a Mark V one. So hopefully the one that's on that engine at the moment is a Mark V one as well. If not, we'll have to be changing oil pumps. So yeah, this is the fuel tank that was sitting where I was just showing you. Pretty cool, really. Really small, but obviously as a drag car, you don't need loads of fuel. You just need to go down the strip, back from the strip, fill it up again. Obviously I've kept all the lines and stuff like that. I've kept the drive shaft. This is a solid drive shaft. Just needs a new CV boot. And this, I think I showed you before, but I'll show you again, because I know not everyone watches all of the videos. So this is the belt driven fuel pump by Aero Motive. So that would sit where the fuel pump is. Bit of a correction here. What I meant is it would replace the steering pump. This is actually the fuel pump itself. So I don't know why I said it was going to sit next to the fuel pump. So yeah, if you look at this picture, just where I'm putting this little arrow, it would be sitting under the alternator on a custom bracket. And then a belt would go on there. So it would be driven off the crank with that attachment on there. So this is the old engine that was in the drag car. This engine's no good. And that's why the car got broken in the first place. So that could be an idea for now, because for now I am going to be using an in the car fuel tank, which I was actually given with the car when I got it. I got all these spare parts. Another thing I found that came with the spare parts was this Talon switch panel. So this is a good thing, because obviously this car hasn't got any wiring whatsoever. So we've got no ignition barrel, no indicators, stuff like that. Obviously we don't need indicators, but we do need a way to turn on the ignition, all the power, and you know, the fuel system and stuff like that. So that's really good. That wasn't being used in this car. In this car was a switch panel similar to one that's in my twin turbo. But anyway, I'm going off track. So another thing that I got with the car was this. Put it in the boot just to mock it up. It's not attached. And obviously it wasn't in the car, because as I just showed you, it had the fuel tank in the bonnet. So yeah, I got this. I'm not going to say it was for free, because obviously I bought the car. It just came with the car and a load of spare parts. So I'm going to be using this. I'm going to put the Nuke surge tank that I've got in the other car that I've been taking, well, the car that I just took this engine from, if you remember again in a previous video. So we've got 2 inline pumps in here, all going under the car, marries up to the original fuel lines, and then it goes back to braided lines in the engine bay. We did have a little accident while fitting this engine, ended up breaking the gauge off one of the fuel pressure regulators, but this car's got two. Well, I did have two. I don't know where I've put the other one for some reason. We only need one. So I'm going to redo all this. This fueling was so complicated. Don't get me wrong. It was probably done with a good reason. I don't know the reason. So I'm going to be changing it. All you need is an in and an out. You don't need 3 lines running to it. It just complicates things. So I'm going to uncomplicate things. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take this intercooler back off. We're going to get this inlet manifold off. We're going to get this inlet manifold off along with the fuel rails as well, because they are the original fuel rails that were on this build originally, and then go from there. I have mentioned previously as well, by putting that intake onto this car, that is going to be helping with this build, because this build is currently stuck in limbo due to this intake just causing a load of problems basically. Inlet taken off. Also decided to take the bracket off for the alternator and the steering pump and all that stuff, because with the replacement inlet, as you might know if you watched the previous video, none of this fits. You have to use a Mark V one. Now I have got a Mark V bracket, but that's been sent off to make me a custom bracket for the steering pump. So I've just bought another one which should be here tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to continue much further with this one. However, we can take this one off the twin turbo for now.
Nah, Westy.
Even half stripped, this thing looks absolutely insane. So we've got the inlet manifold off. There it is. I'm going to have to nick the blow-off valve off this as well, because I originally nicked it off this anyway. So yeah, I'm going to need that. Thank you very much. So it's the next day now. Left here about 1 o'clock last night. Got quite a lot done, to be fair. We've got the inlet manifold placed on now. I had to remove the OEM oil cooler because this setup was using not a custom, can't remember what they're called now, but basically, oh, actually, I've got one on this. It was using a billet oil filter housing with these fittings and stuff. I have ordered another one from Jet Engineering, and that should actually be coming today. I ordered it yesterday, so fingers crossed that comes today. And then we can put that on as well. That obviously goes to the oil cooler that was sat here. And what else did we do? I tried to put the downpipe, up pipe on yesterday, just for a bit of show really, just to see how things were starting to look. Also put the wastegate on and realized, well, I'm not going to show you, but basically the engine mount that I decided to use is in the way. This is a Vibratechnics solid engine mount. And I did remember actually, this came with, like this build came with some crazy engine mounts that were custom made. And luckily I kept them in this box. So that's one of them. And that's the other one. So yeah, I'm gonna have to use those. Didn't really want to, but I'm guessing it's just going to be the best option. The problem I've got is this was made to suit the sequential gearbox, which is a different bolt pattern. So these two bolts line up and then this bolt don't. So I'm going to have to get that re-drilled or re-welded, I don't know. If you remember, when I was putting a sequential in the twin turbo, I came across the same issue. Lucky enough, I found, well, the previous owner had the bracket for me, which is here. So that one is completely different to the ones that come on the gearbox as standard. Oh, you can actually see. Oh, there you go. You can see because I've still got the old bracket on, obviously. So you can see. Oh, one sec. So you can see just there how out of line that is. So there's the original one, and then there's the sequential one. And the solid bracket I was just showing you over there is made for the sequential one. So I'd have to get that modified in order to fit this pipe, or have this pipe remade, which I don't really want to do because it's probably going to be more expensive than having a part welded onto that mount. So part of the reason I was down here late last night is I was putting this together a little bit. We've got the alternator bracket put on. We've got the alternator put on, steering pump put on, power steering pipes put on. I just need to put a belt on now. Got this pipe for the turbos all put on. And then I started putting a wiring on and I realized how bad the wiring was. So I'm going to use a different engine loom because that one was burnt. And it is just a temporary engine loom, but even still, even though it's temporary, how long is that going to be for? Knowing me, years. So it's best to just make it as best as I can. I was busy de-pinning and re-pinning the fuel injectors last night as well, because these fuel injectors for some reason use not really about to see, but they use 20 valve ends. So to save me using adapters, I just used a 180 loom. Well, two, because there's 6 cylinders and only 4 on a 20 valve. I've had a couple of deliveries. We've got a Mark 5 alternator bracket, which I need to be able to fit that in that manifold. I've got one, but it's been sent off for customization for something else. With this, you do need to cut off this pulley here. And then I also got this Summit Talon loom. If you remember, obviously I've got that Talon box, switch box. So we're going to have a little play, see if that works, plug it in. So here's a little Talon box I was talking about. Basically it's just a switch panel, and it saves me using those old school switches. In the twin turbo I'm using an ECU Master switch panel with PMU and all that sort of stuff, but all that stuff costs thousands of pounds and I don't fancy buying it twice. This came with the drag car build, so it technically doesn't owe me anything because it wasn't being used. It was just in a box. That's why the loom was missing. So I've not tried this, so I'm not too sure if it's going to work. Hopefully it does, because I just spent like 60 quid getting a loom, but we'll find out. We'll find out together. Oh, we got power. We got power. So I'm obviously just linking it up to a jump pack. Oh, look at that. So I'm guessing you turn the ignition on, that will be, all these wires will be going to relays, and then from the relay, it will be going to whatever it's powering. So obviously fuel system, horn, lights, window screen, indicators, Haldex, all that sort of stuff. What's good as well is you can change what the button does. So obviously that's a press and hold. That's press it once it stays on. With the engine start, obviously you don't want to press that and then it stays on. You want to press it once, come off it, and you know, like basically like you're turning the key. So you just hold it to keep trying to start, and then as soon as you let go, it'll stop. Obviously that'll go to the starter motor, no doubt. Didn't realise a lot of different colour. Quite cool actually. I like that. And I say this is cheap. This is, if you try to buy this new, it's I think they were about £700. I did have one years ago for my twin turbo, but I never used it. I never even took it out of the box. I ended up just selling it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna get that mounted in the car, and then that will aid getting the car started at a later date, because obviously, as I mentioned, there's nothing in the car. There's no key barrel, nothing. One thing I am unsure about is the belt. Now, this is going to be using the Mark V bracket, but I'm going to have to cut this tensioner off. But I'll be keeping the Mark IV one on. So in theory, I should be able to use a Mark V Golf, a Mark V R32 Golf alternator bolt with no aircon. I'm not too sure if they came with no aircon, but I'm sure there'll be a belt I can use. I'm not too sure how far out. This is a Mark IV one. I'm not too sure how far out these are, so I might give that a try while it's here. I might check online and see how the length of these belts versus the length of the Mark V non-aircon ones, maybe, and just see if it fits. Obviously, there's a lot more pulleys on the Mark V one compared to the Mark IV, where there's just the one. So I don't think the Mark IV one's going to work, but I'm just going to go ahead and order the Mark V one and hope that that one works. While I'm waiting for some more parts, like I said, I'm waiting for the oil housing filter thing to come today. I'm waiting for something else as well, but I can't remember exactly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down, get it bolted up, and then get the inlet manifold bolted down properly, because for now it's just being held on by a couple of screws. And then I can get everything lined up, like put the intercooler back on, put the pipe to the throttle body back on, and then I can see how much space I've got, if I've got enough space for a radiator behind the intercooler. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping we can work something, but very worst case scenario, I have decided that I will just put a small one here for the time being until I end up using that belt driven fuel pump, which isn't going to be for a long time, because I'll have to get some sort of custom bracket made, and it's not as straightforward as I thought. Another thing as well, the sump. Now this has got a baffled steel sump by the looks of things. I do need to change that, and I have got the original one, but I would like to use this one, and I've just noticed that this has actually got, well, somewhere that I can put the oil drain pipe to the front. It's not exactly where the other one is on the other sump. The other one's like more to the middle, but maybe I can put some sort of extension on it and use this one. That would be good, and it will save me dropping the sump and all that sort of stuff as well. On the other hand, putting the other one on means that I could probably sell this one. I don't know. We'll see. So for now, I'm just going to put a bracket on, cut it down, pull it on, get everything piped back up, and then see what space I've got. This video is getting quite long, so I'm not going to film all of that. We'll just skip to it. The oil filter housing has arrived, and before I put it on, I just thought I'd show you how nice it is, and give a shout out to Jet Engineering. None of this stuff is sponsored, but when you get what you pay for, and especially with next day delivery, because you knew how urgent I needed it, you know, you got to pay homage. So thank you for that. A few days have actually passed now, and I can't remember what I recorded and what I didn't, so I will edit this accordingly. But for now, I'm going to go over everything that I've changed, just in case I didn't record it. So I've now put the oil cooler on just to see whether the lines that I had before went up to the new oil housing, and they do. I had a bit of trouble with these lines actually, but we got it sorted. I've put the return braided line on from the turbo. As I mentioned previously, I wanted to see if I could use the sump that's on at the moment. Turns out I can't, or I probably could, but I would have to extend that braided line, do this, do that. It's better for me to just change the sump, and then I can actually give this sump to whoever buys the old turbo kit. I can't remember if I'd put the wastegate on, but I have put the wastegate on. What else have I done? Changed the inlet manifold, rocker cover, sorry, to the one that came with this build originally. It's got some nice AM fittings on it, and that will go to a oil catch can. I need to change this mount, which I'll be doing today as well, so that I can put the bonnet exit exhaust on. I'm not much sure if I mentioned this, but hopefully I did. So we've now got the Mark V alternator bracket on. So we've got the Mark 5, well, it's a Mark 5, Mark 4 alternator, but it's moved it down. I've trimmed the top bit of the alternator bracket down so that could get on. And I've put this belt on, which you can see is very, very loose. So this is a Mark 4 Golf R32 belt with air con delete, and as you can see, there's loads of slack in it. So I have actually bought, where are they? So I've actually bought some more belts, which are for the Mark 5 Golf R32 with air con delete. I had to wait for those to come because nowhere had them in stock. So I'm hoping that they fit, and then we are further along in the build then. Saves me a lot of trouble. So yeah, I'm going to crack on with the rest of it because the whole idea was to get this inlet manifold on and get the intercooler on to make sure that it fitted. But as you can see, I've done a lot more than that. So let's crack on with that, and then we'll pick up after I've done all of that. So it turns out neither of those belts fitted. I ended up getting a 20 valve, like a 180 turbo Mark 4 Golf non-aircon alternator belt, which fitted sort of, but we'll get into that another time. And actually, while I was fitting that belt, I realized the reason that those other two belts didn't fit was because I haven't got a steering pump. So there was a bit of slack in them, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, the car is now up on the ramps with the help of my brother pushing it on. We're going to take a little look underneath it, but the main reason it is up here is to take off this sump and replace it with the other one I was talking about. So yeah, this is the first time I've had it on a ramp, and it's the first time I've actually looked underneath it. So all this has been powder coated, which is really nice. We've got powder coated anti-roll bar, fresh hubs by the looks of it as well. The old fuel line is still on, along with the old charge cooler line, because there used to be a charge cooler in the bank. There's no tank, petrol tank, so there's loads of room there. The rear is looking horrible. There's no other word for it. So all this will have to get pulled off and powder coated at some point, but I think we're way off that right now. And yeah, that's what happens when you've got a 20-year-old car. I think this is older than 20 years old because this isn't an R32. This is a 2.8. So I think these came out around 99, 2000, if my memory serves me right. But underneath's not too bad. I did notice that this was twisted. So I'm not too sure how that's happened. Maybe from a launch, or maybe it's been jacked up in the wrong place. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna crack on and get this sump off and then put the replacement on, which is here, with this big ass AN fitting on there. Also, we need to clean that up as well. And I don't give a monkey. So I've got the sump off. I've given underneath a bit of a wipe down. Tried to get rid of as much of the sealant as I can. Just thought I'd show you underneath here for anyone that might want to buy the engine off me in the future. See, oh, you can't even see because the torch is dead, but I didn't really give the spec of this engine actually. It's a fully built engine, top to bottom, fully built gearbox, the lot. Maybe I'll put the whole spec in this in a second. Is there something that's going to go on? Give it a bit of a clean out. This is a Mark 5 sump, so that means I've usually had to change the oil pump, but it's already got a Mark 5 one on them, luckily. I've took all the baffle out, give it all a clean down, tied it up as much as I can. Again, got all the sealant off the edge, and then we're going to seal it up, stick it back on, and that's another job ticked off the list. Right guys, a few weeks have passed since me recording that video, and I am still waiting for some parts. I was hoping to get the car started in this video, but the video is running on a little bit and I've missed uploading a video last week, and I didn't want to miss uploading a video this week as well. So I'm going to leave it for now, come back to it another time, wait for them parts to come, get them on, hopefully get it started, and we will see. If you're wondering what these cars are behind me, Today, someone is going to be winning either this Mark II or this Mark IV Golf R32 or a £7,500 cash alternative. If you don't know already, I run Level Up giveaways, and today the lucky winner is going to have a choice between taking these two. What would you have chosen? Drop a comment in the comments section. Let me know whether you would have took the Mark II VR6, which is supercharged, the Mark IV Golf R32, which is modified out of its nut, air ride, big brakes, big wheels, loads and loads of modifications. But listen guys, until next time, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll catch you all on the next video. See you later.